Barack Obama wins, and a lot of people have been disenfranchised. That's unacceptable. Because ultimately, what this is really about is the survival of democracy, of a democratic republic. That's what this is about. So you cannot just come up with a burst of energy that will allow you to sort of slide past the finish line on election day and then collapse in exhaustion. You may feel like doing that. But first of all, the struggle may only be starting on election day because there may well be another protracted post-election hassle. But beyond that, this has got to stop. See, we have got to reform the voting system and much else besides so that we're living in a country that really deserves to be called a democracy. See, we need to get rid of the voting machines, lock, stock, and barrel. No more computerized voting or vote counting. Because whether it's paperless voting machines or the op scans that you all have in this state, you're talking about a secret vote count that's managed by private companies, all of which have close ties to the Republican Party, by the way. That's not to be borne. You should be telling your Secretary of State, who's uninterested in this issue, who has turned away from the evidence, you should tell her, no, I'm sorry, we don't want op scans here, okay? They're not trustworthy, they're hackable. Vermonters for voting integrity, Rob mentioned, there are forms of theirs out on the table. Please get them and read them. You know, even though you're not a swing state and you probably feel that your votes don't count because nobody cares about Vermont with its 2 electoral votes and everything, you're still part of the union, still, okay? And your votes are important. You don't want your votes to be thrown away, and you've got you know, items on your ballot that I think matter greatly to you, having to do with nuclear power plants and stuff like that. You don't want to use a form of voting that's iffy, that's opaque, where you can't see the votes being counted. So we need, you know, not only to get rid of the electronic voting machines, but we also need a ban on the participation of all private companies in our election system, okay? We need to get rid of electronic voter rolls, right? We need to make Election Day a federal holiday. I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff we need to do just to be able to believe that our elections are democratic, okay? Because I want to say this again, without that awareness, without that certainty, without that power, we have no power at all, okay? So my view is that unless we all face this issue, we're really screwed. But that if we do face the issue, we cannot fail to realize the promise of our founding revolution. Thank you.
Mark Crispin Miller. How about one more round of applause? Wow. Thanks, Mark.
Your questions still mine? Sure.
Mark's agreed to answer questions. It's 8:20. We're going to go till 9 o'clock, and then Mark's got books, and he's going to sign them in the back, loser take all. And I think there's probably a lot of good questions. I'm just going to kind of run around and get out of the way. I should say one thing, though. The town of Calais. Do we have anyone here from Calais, Vermont tonight?
Anybody from Calais?
You want to tell that story, Mark?
Yeah, Calais voted not to use op scans. Okay, the town of Calais has voted against op scans.
Like last week. Like it just
last
happened.
week.
Yeah.
Can we hear it for Calais? What's that? Well, that's too goddamn bad.
Yeah. Hi. I've never understood in 2004 why Kerry and what you said about the Democrats not talking about or wanting to talk about the issue. Why?
Yeah, right.
And Kerry saying we're going to fight this and then rolling over instantly.
Right. Okay, good question.
And Mark, can you tell the cocktail party story?
I'll tell my cocktail party story. This is an amazing story, okay? And of course, it's a question I've asked myself for years, and I think I can answer it. but I'm going to start the answer with this story. When my last book, Fooled Again, came out in hardcover, which was in October of 2005, I arranged to meet John Kerry at a fundraiser in Chelsea, in Manhattan, where I live, because we had a mutual friend who cares about election integrity a great deal, wanted me to meet him, give him the book, get him on board. And what I wanted to say, and tried to say as politely as I could, probably so politely that he didn't know I was saying it, was that, everybody hates your guts because you conceded. And there's one way you can actually get everybody back, and that's by embracing the issue of election fraud, because you are in a moral position to do that. So I had my speech all prepared. I'm waiting in the hallway here, this rich liberal's townhouse, And in comes Kerry with his guy who's there to kind of cater to his needs, also extremely tall. These two huge tall guys come in. Kerry's got the politician's hair, he's looking beautiful. And I went up to him and looked up at him. And I handed him the book and I said, "You were robbed, Senator." And he said, to my astonishment, "I know!" Just like that, just like, "I know!" And then went off on this rant about his fellow Democrats in DC and how they won't face the issue. He says, "I was just talking to Chris Dodd last week. I said, Chris, these machines, they're dangerous. We got to do something about these machines." You know what he said to me? He said to me, "We've looked into it. There's nothing to it." They're in denial. He says this to me. Now, can I just say parenthetically that he didn't remember this, but I'd actually met with him 2 years before at George Plimpton's house, see? Because I wanted to say to him, the voting machines are really dangerous, and, would you focus on that? And it was obvious as he was looking at me, he's thinking, who is this nut? He wore a very concerned politician's face, just thinking, Jesus Christ, another lunatic, So I was sort of gratified that he'd been fighting with Chris Dodd about it, right? But I was stunned by this. He's telling me this. So I did my speech, and I said, you can really embrace this issue. I said, in the tradition of your investigations in the Senate of Iran-Contra and BCCI, which I said were the highlight of your Senate career, which I believe, that in that tradition, you should make this your issue. So we kicked this around for a while, and we had partnered on excellent terms. He said, "I'm going to read this. Thank you so much for it." He socked me on the arm. He really did. Reached down and socked me on the arm. And then he gave me a thumbs up, too, which was just so thrilling I can't even begin to... I was in love, you know what I mean? I waited for him to pass me a football, What do you say? Win this one for the Gipper, But still, all kidding aside, I was really elated. I thought, this is amazing. This wasn't off the record. Should have been. So that was October 28th, Friday night, and a week, and my book tour started on Tuesday for Fooled Again. And then a week later, on Friday morning, I was on Amy Goodman's Democracy Now! And debating with Mark Hertzgaard of Mother Jones, who had come out with a piece saying that Ohio wasn't stolen. How did he know? He went there and talked to a Democrat who told him it wasn't. I'm not kidding. That was that stupid. So, then he says at one point something like, well, if it was stolen, Kerry would have blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, in fact, okay? And I told the story. So Hertzgaard said, wow, you really buried the lead. That's big news. And, why is John Kerry telling you at a party? Why isn't, So the producers of the show sent out a press release, which you can still Google, still floating out there. Kerry told me he thinks the race was stolen. And the internet lights up. People are flipping out. They're either saying this is great or the schmuck, what took them so long. Whatever they said, they were really galvanized by this. This was like, 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, and by 1, Kerry's office released a statement categorically denying we'd had the conversation. We know that Professor Miller's trying to sell a book. I made it up, right? It was this publicity stunt. Next, I was going to jump out of a cake, right? Very insulting. I was really pissed off, Actually, I was shocked.